Please stand. Almighty God, we pray for your blessing upon this council. Help and prosper its work for the advancement and benefit of its people, so that peace and happiness, unity and justice may be established amongst us all. Amen.
Amen.
Manningham City Council acknowledges the Wurundjeri people as the traditional custodians of the land we now know as Manningham. We pay our respects to Wurundjeri elders past and present and value the ongoing contribution to the cultural heritage of Manningham. Council would also like to acknowledge the contribution made to Manningham over the years by people of diverse backgrounds and cultures. I'd like to welcome all members of the public joining us online to observe proceedings tonight. As a result of the current COVID restrictions that remain in place, members of the community are not permitted to attend tonight's council meeting in person. The health and safety of our community employees is our priority during these uncertain times. We have, however, been reviewing the conduct of our meetings regularly, and we anticipate, subject to restrictions, being able to invite the community back to the chamber at our next meeting. We will keep you up to date on the arrangements on our website. We are still taking questions from the public and encourage you to submit your questions in accordance with our normal practices. As you cannot be present in the chamber to read your question, our CEO will read it on your behalf. A response will then be provided where we have the information to hand. If we're unable to provide a meaningful response, we will take your question on notice and provide a response in writing. We will deal with a maximum of 2 questions per person and 2 questions on any one issue. If you have more than 2 questions, please submit these additional questions in writing through the normal channels. Council meetings are governed by Manningham's governance rules. I'll introduce each item of business as listed on the agenda, calling it by number and reading it by the title. I will then call for a mover and a seconder of the motion on the item. A mover and seconder of a motion on the item before opening any debate. Only councillors are allowed to join the debate on any item. Councillors may adopt the officer's recommendation in the report or propose amendments and supplementary motions. Item 2, apologies and requests for leave of absence. There are no apologies. Item 3, prior notification of conflicts of interest. We have one prior notification of a conflict of interest that has been received from Councillor Diamonte in relation to items 8 and 15. Councillors, would anyone else like to give notice of a conflict of interest? There being none, I'll move on to item 4, confirmation of minutes. Do I have a mover? Councillor Chen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I move that the minutes of the council meeting held on 15th December 2020 be confirmed.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Lang. Thank you. I will put that in motion. Those in favour? And that is passed unanimously. Thank you. Presentations. Passing of Lionel Alamand, OAM. Councillors, it is with deep sadness that I must inform you of the recent passing of Mr Lionel Alamand, OAM. Mr Alamand was elected to the Doncaster and Templestowe City Council in 1990. He was Mayor of the city in 1994. Following the return of local democracies in 1997, after earlier amalgamations, Lionel was again elected to the reformed Manningham City Council, where he served until 2002. Lionel was elected in successive years as Mayor in 1999, 2000 and in 2000-2001. Mr Alamand served on many committees, most often aligned with his particular skills and interests in youth development, disability support, emergency management and healthy lifestyles and sport. He was Vice Chair of the Manningham Recreation Association for 27 years, Chairman of the Municipal Emergency Planning Committee for 8 years, Vice Chairman of Manningham Youth Services over many years and showed great leadership in launching Manningham's anti-graffiti plan and anti-smoking campaign. Mr Alamand has a long association with Manningham Council, and he has made an outstanding contribution to the Manningham community for more than 35 years in many different sectors, demonstrating his passion, dedication and commitment to the community. Do I have a mover for the condolence motion?
I move the motion, Mr Mayor. Do you want me to read out the
Yes,
motion?
thank you, Councillor Goff.
That Council place on record its sadness of the recent passing of former Mayor and Councillor, Mr Lionel Alamand, OAM. Record its appreciation for the contribution by Mr Alamand to the Manningham Council and the broader community, and extend its sympathies and condolences to Mr Alamand's family at this very difficult time.
Thank you, Councillor Goff. I am happy to second that motion. Councillor Goff, would you like to speak to the motion?
Mr Mayor, I am saddened to actually have to come up here and speak at this particular time on the passing of who I consider a great friend and a wonderful person for Manningham over many years, Lionel Alamand. I came to know Lionel after I was elected, but Lionel's work in our community started many years before that. Very rarely do you find someone as committed into so many different areas of our community that Lionel was committed to. As a career policeman for communities around everywhere, he was heavily involved, I know, in the police unions. He was heavily involved in the police credit union and heavily involved in their sporting associations. But also within Manningham, he was deeply involved in sports in Manningham. He was deeply involved in bringing, I suppose, programs to support people in Manningham with people with disabilities and also people that have other difficulties, and he was always there to help. And in fact, the first time I actually contacted Mr Alamand, he was going to lend me a trailer because we were on a strike, a garbage strike, and I rang up the council and complained, and he was the only one that rang me back, and he actually said, look mate, you can borrow my trailer if you like. So a wonderful community person. But let me get more on to that person in our community that was Lionel. Lionel was always a trustworthy, upfront person. You knew where you stood with Lionel. His word was his Bible. It was it. If he gave his word on something, that was it. He was always readily able and always offered to help people. And he reflected the community attitude in on the council table and didn't give in to any pressure or groupthink or whatever. He actually stood for what he believed in, and you heard about what he believed in. And in fact, after I have been on council for 23 years, and in all of that time, my fondest memories are the first 10 or so, where we had a group of people that we all do have a special bond. No, we didn't agree on every topic, but that group of councillors brought a whole lot of change into Manningham, but worked together. And I'm going to make a couple of quotes now, and at the end of this, I wish to table a eulogy that was given by a former CEO, John Benny, of Manningham. But just pick out a couple of quotes, and I want to table this to put into the record of our council meeting because it sums up a number of the things about Lionel here. But a couple of them, I'll just read what he says here, and this is true. Lionel led a council group that was progressive, collaborative, committed and understood good governance before it was a corporate necessity. This had much to do with their respective skills, but Lionel's leadership and capacity underpinned the success of a civic team. And I'll quote another one here. He and his council expected innovation and creativity and weren't afraid for mistakes to be made in pursuing improvement. The most important bit next is a no-blame culture was the outcome. And finally, honesty, a core and unquestionable trait of Lionel Alamand. And they're very important things. And if I go back to being a councillor and go back to the time, 27 years on the Manningham Recreation Association. Now, that doesn't exist anymore. It was closed down. We tendered out a number of highball facilities away from that association. But Manningham need to thank Lionel and the Manningham gosh, that's shocking, isn't it? And the Manningham Recreation Association. We do need to thank them because they were the first group to build basketball courts in the city of Manningham. Doncaster and Templestowe at the time were unable to do so. But private groups of people got together, formed an association, and council did underwrite their debt. But the first 4 or 5 basketball stadiums within Manningham were built by this group, and that's how they got built. It was only later on that the council took over to actually fund and do that work. So that work for 27 years is a long time, and let me tell you, he wasn't on it from that time. So you go back a long time with that he's a group in that association. But he was also involved in emergency response things, and that's because he was a councillor in that particular area. And also very much with regard to people with disability and so forth in our community, working tirelessly for them. As I said before, there is a special bond between all the people that were in that first council, and today, even though we don't agree, very good friends, and we trust them implicitly, and it was a wonderful time within that. But Lionel was a very honourable person and trustworthy throughout all of that time, and it was a privilege to have worked with him that time and to see his real caring nature for our community. The other message I'd like to give now is to Mary Lou and his children, and I don't know how many grandchildren, but Lionel did have 10 children, and Mary Lou, it is with great sadness that I will miss Lionel, and I know that the people in the past in this community will miss Lionel and his involvement. And as I said before, the involvement was also within sporting teams, Donvale Football Club, Donvale Cricket Club, and I think what is it? Come on, Catholic Boys School. Whitefriars. Yeah, not Saint anything. It was Whitefriars and the teams and things out in that area. But he was a stalwart and very supportive. And if people wanted help, he would assist them and give them information and give them help and take up their issue and be a voice for the people. So with that, it is great sadness that he has passed away, and but his legacy is still here with a lot of the programs that we still run in Manningham. And I could have gone through, and this will actually go through quite a number of the issues that were topical at the time. But a couple of them were our 3-bin system, which was the first, basically, throughout Australia. We were doing the 3-bin system, and secondly, the extension of the Eastern Freeway, and there was a big fuss about that. But more importantly, the Doncaster Hill strategy. We had a big application for a very tall building, and we didn't know what to do, and that started the concept of limiting the heights in Doncaster Hill with the Doncaster Hill strategy. And rather than having it as just a freeway, I would say Sydney Road, but I think it's Parramatta Road in Sydney, which is just a really wide and just cars going left, right, centre and car yards, was to envisage something different than just car yards around this core of Doncaster Hill, envisaging a tree-lined boulevard and changing the nature of Doncaster Hill and limiting the heights within that area, which was all part of that program, which started off in his term at the initial stages with that when he was mayor. So it's with great respect that council does record its sympathy and thankfulness to Lionel for his work at Manningham.
Thank you, Councillor.
And Mr. Mayor, I will table this, which is a printout of the eulogy that John Benny gave, and if that could be included in the
Certainly.
minutes, that'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Councillor Goff. My first experience with Lionel was actually way before I was on council, and it was he was coaching one of my boys in cricket, and so that's my boy Jamie. He played with Lionel's, I think, his youngest son, and it was quite it's quite incredible. So I heard about this guy who had more kids than me, so that was unusual. But the impression I got from Jamie playing, he'd struggled with cricket up to that point. Because if anyone's been involved with cricket, it's often about sort of who you know, and you know, you might be a bowler or you might be a batter, you might get a go, but if you're sort of a bit of an all-rounder, you might be down the bottom of both of those lists. So Lionel was the first coach that Jamie had that gave him actually a fair go. And I think that's really reflective of what Councillor Goff was talking about in terms of someone who was really caring and really just, about giving everyone a fair go and not worrying about the result so much as seeing the bigger picture and seeing the development of people. And so that was my very clear impression of Lionel when I first met him. When I was fortunate enough to be mayor in my first term, we had a meeting with Lionel, and it was about the Don Vale Cricket Club. And he, at that point, I don't think he had any position within the club, but he was just being an advocate. He was an effective advocate for those groups, and he was very effective. He was very fair-minded. Again, he was able to listen to an argument. He would accept, he would be to and fro, but always treated people with respect and had clear views about the way things should go, and that was great. As Councillor Goff said, you were never in doubt where you stood with Lionel. So I have really appreciated my contact with Lionel, and our sympathies certainly go to Mary Lou and the children and his extended family. Now, I would like to, if anyone else would like to say something, Councillor Mayne.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Look, just a few brief comments. I agree with all the sentiments from you, Mr Mayor, and Councillor Goff. I first met Lionel when I was the council nominee on the MRA committee in 2009, and found him to be a very reasonable, intelligent advisor to a new councillor. He was also a hard man to please. You couldn't big note yourself and impress him easily. He was quite no nonsense, and he was a very credible, shrewd judge of person. He didn't say a lot, but his comments were always very insightful. He knew all the history and he was there to help. And I was very impressed in dealing with him. I then remember bumping into him at the 40th anniversary dinner for the Bulleen Boomers. And that's a good sign of how good a councillor he was, is that 10 years after leaving council, he was still being invited to invitation-only major events by major sporting clubs. I remember going to speak at a credit conference in Manly, and Lionel was there. He was representing the police union, well into his 70s, still holding industry positions of note, respected by his colleagues in the police force. I then remember bumping into him. My last time I saw him was coming out of the Yarra Valley Country Club, where he'd just run a function commemorating the death of Constable Angela Taylor, who was the first policewoman killed in duty in Australia in the Russell Street bombings in 1986. And many years after he had retired from the police force, he was still running the annual lunch to raise money for her family, in this case at the Yarra Valley Country Club. So I think that is a sign of his level of commitment. I remember asking him why he ran for council, and he said, Eastern Freeway Extension, mate. That was what I was after. Now, I'd love it if he'd got a train reservation in that, but it wasn't to be. But that was what motivated him. And then I'm not sure, I haven't actually checked the facts, but I think it's correct to say that he never lost an election. Councillor Goff, you might correct me on that, but I think he was elected first time round and then retired after his second 5 years. So anyone who can win 4 elections and never lose is terrific. Anyone who can be mayor 3 times out of 9 is very highly regarded by their councillor colleagues. So I would regard Lionel Ellerman as one of the 3 or 4 best councillors in the last 30 years in the history of Doncaster, Templestowe and Manningham. Sacked in 1994 for 3 years, the ignominy of that, along with every other councillor in Victoria, agreed to come back, elected again after the commissioners picked up the pieces, and for anyone to get John Benny, who was another highly credible, not easy to impress man, to speak like he did at Lionel's funeral, I think speaks volumes of the quality of Lionel's contribution at council. And I think it's excellent that Councillor Goff has had those words included in the minutes tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Mayne. Is there anyone else? Thank you, councillors. And sadly, we're moving to the passing of Brother Sean Keefe, OAM.
Can I put the motion for?
Sorry, thank you. Yes, I will put the motion. Those in favour? And that is carried. Passing of Brother Sean Keefe, OAM. Councillors, it's with deep sadness that I must inform you of the recent passing of Brother Sean Keefe, OAM. Brother Sean was the chaplain of Whitefriars College and ran a number of community projects involving students from the school. He was also involved in wider community projects in the community, some of which included the Kiwanis Club of Doncaster Templestowe, Manningham Promoting Character Management Committee, Drive Alive Today, Tomorrow Committee, Walk the Talk Committee, Support to Doncare, Responsible Driving Committee, and Making Wiser Choices Committee. And significantly, Brother Sean administered the Manningham Monster Community Raffle and that's been promoted by him since its inception, which has generated substantial funds for our community organisations, for this municipality and beyond. Do I have a mover? Councillor Kleinert?
Thank you. That council place on record its sadness at the recent passing of Brother Sean Keefe, OAM, record its appreciation for the contribution by Brother Sean to the Manningham community, and extend its sympathy and condolences to Brother Sean's family at this very difficult time.
Thank you, Councillor Kleinert. Do I have a seconder? Sorry, yep, Councillor Goff. Councillor Kleinert.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, certainly it was quite sad to hear the news of Brother Sean, but in another light, I felt a sense of peace and happiness that he's now resting in his home. He, in his later years, was quite ill and never complained. And if you ever met Brother Sean, all that you remember is his beautiful, warm smile. He was just the most caring, natured, very honourable, so kind, so selfless, and never ever complained. Never ever said a bad or a negative thing. Even if the rain was pouring down and things were flooding, Brother Sean found something positive to say. He will be sadly missed. He was so well loved by the Manningham community because he really went above and beyond his role at Whitefriars. And if I look at the Kiwanis, every time there was a sausage sizzle, who would be there? Brother Sean, without fail. And so even in recent days, when the Kiwanis assisted in the Australia Day barbecue, the Kiwanis were there, and it was a strange feeling to look. You looked for him, and he wasn't there, but there was something. I felt that his spirit was very much there, and his spirit is very much and will remain alive in Manningham because of his beautiful work. The Manningham Monster Community Raffle was absolutely one of the most amazing things that I personally think that he did for that greater community, and it helped raise thousands of dollars for multiple communities, sporting, art, Doncare and beyond, the Women's Friendship Group. He gave so much heart and passion to delivering that raffle and coordinating it every year. And I have to say, for me personally, it touches me greatly to know that he was very much part of my year when I was mayor in 2017 and ran the Monster Raffle, because council can't run a raffle, and my desire to raise money for a mental health service for our youth. Brother Sean spent hours and hours working on making that happen as part of my goal. And so I really truly believe that every youth that gets help through Headspace yesterday, today and beyond is attributed to the fact that he worked and gave so much time to making that happen and helping raise that seed funding originally that we have today, a service locally in Manningham, which is wonderful. So there's legacies that live on, and that's a trait of good character when they move on to their next chapter in their life, that the seeds that they sowed grew and flourished and great things came out of that. So I know that there'll be many people very sad for his passing and will miss him greatly. But just as we've said with former Mr. Lionel Alamein, you know, these are great contributors to our city that have been part of moulding and making and forever leaving a mark that's beautiful. And that is why we love where we live, because there's people just like that, great examples all around, and all that they've done will live on.
Thank you, Councillor Kleinert. Councillor Goff.
Mr Mayor, again, it is with great sadness that I stand here, but I'm here to thank for the life of Brother Sean Keefe, who was a person that I met fairly early on I suppose it was probably, my first recollections were in about the year 2000, but he was working probably before that here. But indeed, as a chaplain of Whitefriars, a boys' school, he did a wonderful job, not only within the boys' school itself, within that realm, but he brought Whitefriars to Manningham and to the community, and was the outward face of Whitefriars throughout the city of Manningham, assisting so many different groups within Manningham. This is just a short list, really, of groups that he was associated with, that he worked with. And as Councillor Kleinert has said, he was always that happy, cheery face, welcoming and talking. And if you had a problem, he would sit there and listen and things like that as well. And you know, his resilience through the last number of years now, because he had been quite ill for a number of years under treatment, and then his resignation to the fact that, yep, it is my time to pass on, and let that all go through without a whinge or complaint. A beautiful person. He has affected a lot of lives within Manningham that have known him, and anyone that has known him, it has been a privilege for them to know him. And it's by no coincidence that one of the committees, Manningham Promoting Character, the management committee of that was a program that Councillor Alamein brought in the early 2000s and was running up until last year. But that particular program, Brother Sean was involved with and ran with in here, and was a vital element of that with it. And, you know, I forget the name, but it might have been the Drive Alive to Tomorrow committee or the Responsible Driving committee, but again, raising money to have education programs for young people who are getting their licence and helping kids that can't go and get a licence, get that instruction and whatever, and road safety stuff through, because that is one of the major killers, as we know, of young people that are in our area is accidents and things like that. Just going into those areas. But the Kiwanis group, he was a vital member of, and all of the work that they do in raising funds and doing things for our community. He will be sorely missed because he's irreplaceable, and I know that Whitefriars will be going through, even though he mightn't have been working at his top in the more recent times, but he was a person from there that we could identify with and our community knew. I know that with, I'm the patron of the Manningham Relay for Life, and Brother Sean would always, in those early years, be at a Manningham Relay for Life in the tents in the middle of hours of the night, always part and parcel of the programs that are going on in Manningham. So it's with that that I do endorse Councillor's resolution to honour him in this way. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other councillors? Councillor Chen.
And we have heard all the good things Brother Sean has done to this community and the contributions he made to Manningham community. I have no intention to repeat it all over again, otherwise we could not go to the next item to discuss issues. And that means that he really has done great contributions to us. And I just want to say my own personal feeling about Brother Sean. And that was 4 years ago when I first met Brother Sean. That was in my first women's friendship group, Morning Tea. And since then, I have met him every single month. He was always there. And to me, I mean, as a new councillor and as a person from a cold community, and I feel warm when I speak to him. He was always there, and when I approach him, always with a smile. A big heart, softly spoken, and I feel welcomed. And I have no hesitation to speak to him and crack a few jokes, and he's there and he understands. Even though sometimes my English probably a little bit crappy, and he did not mind at all. So I was still in disbelief that I'm sure what he has done to the community will be forever missed. To me, I feel a deep sadness. So, I mean, a person that will be very difficult to replace. So rest in peace, Brother Sean.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. I'd like to just add my sympathies to for his family. Yeah, as we've heard, he was a beautiful man. I met Brother Sean first time at a women's fellowship too, and every other one that I've been to, I think he's been at. It's quite an amazing support, and you meet a lot of people in the community, and you say hello, and then within a few minutes they've said, oh, you know, I've got this problem down here, you know, can we do something about it? But I can't recall Brother Sean ever asking for anything. He just did his job, just the beautiful man. So with that, I'll actually put the motion. Those in favour? Thank you. And that is passed. You understand? You understand? Sorry. Yes, thank you. Yeah. Councillors, I think it'd be appropriate tonight to just stand for a minute and in silence in memory of both Brother Sean and Councillor Lionel Alamand. Thank you, councillors and staff. Item 5.3, Australian Day Honours 2021. I would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge the following Manningham residents who are recipients of awards in the 2021 Australia Days Honours list. There was Mr John Gosling, OAM, for significant service to people who are blind or have low vision, and also the late Mrs Margaret Cunningham for service to women and girls and to the community. Item 6, petitions. 6.1, petition reconciliation action plan. Do I have a mover?
Yes, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Diamonte.
The petition with one signature requesting Council to review its 2021 Reconciliation Action Plan to reflect the historic and ongoing role of Reconciliation Manningham in the planning and conduct of reconciliation activities in the municipality, as well as include an intention to enter a formal cultural heritage agreement with the Woiwurrung Corporation to identify Aboriginal cultural heritage sites in Manningham, be received and referred through to the appropriate officer for consideration.
Thank you, Councillor Diamonte. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Lang. Thank you. I will put that motion. Those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Item 7, public question time. We've received a number of questions for tonight's meeting. Our CEO will read out our first question from Mr. Elio Stocco.
Thank you, Mayor. There are two questions. The first question is, I was very surprised to note that reading the December issue of Manningham Matters, there was not a single mention of the NELP, the North East Link project. According to the NELP website, the preferred design will be selected and released in 2021. Can Council please provide an update of this project? The latest update was July 2020 on the Council's website. And the second question was, according to the NELP website, the project states that we'll also be talking to residents closest to the project to help inform the location, design and materials and structure close to homes like noise walls and bridges. I have a property and consider that I will be impacted by the project. To date, I've not been contacted. Can you, the Council, advise how and when residents will be contacted and consulted as a part of the preferred design process?
Mr. Stocco, thank you for your questions. As the questions relate to the North East Link project, I'll ask Mr. Angelo Carambas, Director of City Planning and Community, to please respond. Thank you. Angelo.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, through you. Thank you for your question, Mr Stocco. In response to your first part of your question, thanks for the feedback, and we will progressively update the website as more information comes to hand. But North East Link is still working on the design of the North East Link project and has not released any further design details to Council at this time. But during the last few months, Council has been actively working with the North East Link project on a number of things, including the early works component of the projects, the relocation of the main sewer beneath Bulleen Road, and another example would be the new Park and Ride, Bulleen Park and Ride facility, and also the relocation of the sporting clubs from Bulleen Park to a brand new facility on Templestowe Road. So the Council has been very active during the last few months. In response to your second question, as I mentioned, the North East Link is still working on the details of the design for the project, and it's our understanding that once they've advanced that work, that the North East Link will liaise directly with those affected residents. That is a requirement of the condition that the Minister placed on the project, that there is appropriate consultation with residents. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Angelo. We've also received two questions from Shan.
The first question is, Council encourages its residents to contact via email manningham@manningham.vic.gov.au as the central point with any queries. Does Council have any system to review any unattended email queries on a regular basis? I've contacted the Council on 14th of December 2020 at 3:39 p.m. and again followed up on the 5th of January 2021 2:05 p.m. seeking response to queries raised on 14th December. All I got was a system-generated automatic acknowledgement. Question is, what is the reasonable time to expect, under Council's Customer Service Charter, to expect responses for my queries raised on 14th December 2021, please.
Thank you, Mr Shan, for your questions. As the questions relate to customer services, I will ask Mr Philip Lee, Director of Shared Services, to please respond.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and thank you for your questions, Mr Shan. I'll do my best to answer because there's a few parts to your question. Firstly, I'd like to say sorry to the issues you've experienced in corresponding with us. Our Manningham at Manningham inbox is managed and cleared daily by our information management team. They scan any request. They then create a request in our customer relationship management system, and it is forwarded to the relevant area within council to action and respond. That's the high-level process. We did some investigation on your 3 emails. The first email you sent on the 14th of December at 3:31 p.m. to the governance inbox was responded to and actioned on the same day. Your second email on the same day, but sent on 3:40 p.m. to the Manningham at Manningham inbox, unfortunately on this occasion, the email was not acknowledged within our service level agreement of 2 business days, and the CRM system reminders were also overlooked on this occasion. So I can only apologise on council's behalf. However, I believe that this request has now been responded to and resolved for you. The third email you sent on the 5th of January, also to the Manningham and Manningham inbox, was in response to the auto response email. Now, with that one, we have an auto rule which, with anything with automated reply in the headline of the email, gets automatically sorted to another folder and then deleted. It unfortunately happened to your email. It is an oversight of council on this occasion where we, due to COVID, that content in that auto response email has changed several times to accommodate the COVID-19 conditions, and it was omitted in terms of saying clearly that those sort of emails are not to be responded to, as you did on this occasion. So I apologise for that. That has since been resolved as well, with a clear message to our customers to say to please do not respond to these emails. Your other question relates to our service level agreements, and as I've said, it is our aim to respond with acknowledgement within 2 business working days, and then also to inform you of how long, depending on the request, it should take to resolve. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. I'd just like to add that it is a great outcome from customers' feedback that we've found a fault in the process and fixed it. So thank you for your feedback. Item 8, admission of urgent business.
Excuse me, Mr Mayor.
Yes.
Councillor and Mr Mayor, I would like to disclose that I do have a conflict of interest relating to this item, that being a general conflict of interest, so I'll excuse myself for the room while you discuss the matter.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Diamonte. It noted that Councillor Diamonte has left the room. Do I have a mover? Councillor Stephen Mayne.
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move that council admits for consideration the following urgent business item at item 15 of this meeting. That council, 1, notes with concern a letter...
Sorry, I think if you just limit it to...
Sorry, you're right. I move the motion be admitted. It's item 1, item 15.1, Commonwealth Bank Australia branch closure at Macedon Square.
Thank you, councillor Mayne. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Kleinert. Would you like to speak to the motion at all, councillor Mayne?
No, Mr Mayor.
Councillor Kleinert. Are there any other speakers for or against the motion? There being no speakers, I will put that motion. Those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Could someone invite Councillor Diamonte back? Thank you, Councillor Diamonte. We will be considering that item in further business. At item 15. Item 9, planning permit applications. There are no planning permit applications. Item 10, city planning and community. There are no city planning and community reports. City services. Item 11.1. Simons Lane upgrade, laydown area and main site compound location, 2 to 14 Websters Road, Templestowe. Proposed tenancy. Do I have a mover? Motion? Councillor
Yes,
Kleinert.
that the recommendation be adopted.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mayne, Laura Mayne, sorry. Would you like to speak to the motion at all? Councillor Kleinert.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. This is to do with the Fitzsimons Lane upgrade that the Major Road Projects Victoria will be conducting, and they've basically contacted council to utilise some of our land, Websters Road, and under the Act of 190 and 223 of the Act. Not bad. We are basically going through the process to now take this out to the wider public to get their feedback on this, and then also to set up a panel which yourself and me as the ward councillor will sit on to receive any submissions. Realistically, it's land that's currently used by council depot. As far as the local amenity, there'll be no change as far as anything massive. It's just a place for them to park their equipment and move some bits and pieces as that construction or the widening and upgrade of Fitzsimons Lane happens over the next 1 to 2 years. We don't really have space anywhere else. If you look at all the places that we could possibly go, this seems like quite a reasonable ask. Yes, they pay for the use of our land, which is always a good thing. But yeah, this is strictly, this is a process that we need to go through. So we're not rubber stamping this and saying this is the be all and end all. We're going and letting the public that are in the immediate facility know. Many are already aware of that and have had much of their issues communicated with regards to. They really shouldn't see, from what I understand, any change to what's already happening there at that site. So ask that we just pass the motion and start the process.
Thank you, Councillor Kleinert. Councillor Mayne, would you like to talk to it? Would anyone like to speak against the motion?
I have a question, please.
Councillor Chen, you have a question for the officers?
Yes, I do have a question for officers, please. And I would like to seek clarification about the lease because they are going to use part of the Webster's Road. And I could recall that last year on the 15th of July, we reached an agreement with NELA about the judicial review terms. And I remember one of the terms that mentioned about that they will NELA will spend $150,000 and about redevelopment of the land for future employment precinct. And I just wondering whether, because we all know that a lease, the tenant have exclusive possession of the land, and I just wondering will the lease be able to accommodate the development of the land during the lease period? And for example, a clause in the lease to allow council or the stakeholders or the engineers to do some site visit or site inspection in due course. So we will not unnecessarily delay any redevelop of the land because it is very part of the land in Manningham for employment precinct. And this is my first question. Also, the second question is when council published the notices about the lease agreement by law, only the particulars about the lease agreement. I just wondering if public is interested in the lease, will they be able to inspect the lease agreement upon request? That's my questions. Thank you.
So I'll refer it to the CEO initially.
The first part of the question. Oh, the first part of the question, thank you, councillor. The lease itself, and I'll refer to the relevant director to make sure that I'm correct, won't go on for the period of time that will impact on the development of the site. We already have a range of different information on that site, so it shouldn't impede us continuing to do the planning work on that site. And it's only a short-term lease, so it certainly won't impact on us ultimately moving forward on that site at some point in time, because that's a number of years off anyway. In relation to the lease, we may well have to take that one on notice.
Thank you. Do you have any questions? Sorry.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else, Councillor Chen? No?
Thank you.
Would anyone like to speak for or against the motion? There being no further speakers, I'll put that motion. Those in favour? And carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item 11.2, Sport and Recreation Victorian Grant Applications. Do I have a mover? Councillor Laura Mayne.
I'd like to move that the recommendation be adopted.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Chen. Councillor Laura Mayne.
Thank you. This motion exhibits to the state government our proposed allocation of some grants to improve some of our sporting facilities, all of which will be greatly appreciated by our community. So, at Shrams Reserve, we are proposing a $1.8 million second pavilion, with $1.2 million of this being a grant. The almost twin oval facilities only need one pavilion. The layout of Shrams Reserve, with the distance and the hill separating the two ovals, understandably requires two pavilions. Currently, the second pavilion is quite an embarrassment and of 1960s standards. I spoke to the president of the Fitzroy Doncaster Lions Cricket Club on Tuesday, Graham Cook, and he was enthusiastic about council moving this project forward. Also, congratulations to their Premier League team on their recent win over Melbourne Uni. Our second grant request is for Timbridge Reserve, who facilitates football, cricket and soccer throughout the year. We are proposing $250,000 floodlighting, half of which will be a grant. This improvement would comply with safety standards and allow for the facilities to be used more often. And finally, at Rice Reserve, we are proposing a $100,000 field realignment with new fencing and additional cricket net, which will be a $50,000 grant. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mayne. Councillor Chen, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yeah, just very briefly, I feel very, very excited. I mean that every dollar counts. If successful, Sport and Recreation Victoria will provide more than twice of the council's total contributions to the three projects, which is really, really exceptional. So thank you all teams members for your hard work, and I encourage officers continue engaging with local community, sporting clubs, and always have a wish list to have all the documentation ready, and when the grants applications available, just bang to grab it. Congratulations, well done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chen. Any speakers against the motion? Any other speakers to the motion? Councillor Stephen Mayne.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Just to pick up on the Shrams one, I was playing cricket for Doncaster Cricket Club in the mid-1980s, and as a 15-year-old, 16-year-old, playing in the thirds and fourths, Eastern Cricket Association on the lower ground at Shrams, the pavilion was precisely as it is today, 35 years later. Tiny, hopeless, embarrassing. So we then merged with Fitzroy, a heritage district cricket club, in about 1986, and despite it being our #1 club in the whole of Manningham in terms of the quality of the competition, you can see some great cricketers playing there every second Saturday on the top ground, and as Councillor Laura May mentioned, they've won their 5th in a row on Australia Day to move into the 8th of Premier Cricket, and their 3rds and 4ths are still playing with that embarrassing pavilion. The ground is great, the pitch is great. Blackie and the other workers do a great job on the pitch, it just needs the pavilion to be fixed. So Graham Cook, the President, was thrilled to hear there could be a 2-year bring forward of this from the current CapEx of 23-24, and it's a chunky 1.8 million. If we have to 100% fund that, that is a big spend on a secondary pavilion at one of our 6 twin oval facilities. And I think you could run an argument about that being, that's a big spend. So hopefully we'll get the 1.2, we bring it forward. Graham Cook's done 9 years, he's hoping to retire maybe after 10 years and be able to say, got it done, got the pavilion fixed. So really hoping that one comes through, and obviously Timber Ridge, I play cricket at Timber Ridge in the veterans, and it would be great to have some better lighting, because that is a ground that is used for soccer, for footy training, Bulleen, Templestowe, and for cricket. It's got a triple tenancy effectively, and some improved lighting there would be absolutely fantastic. And Rysheks, of course, has got the 2 ovals as well. It's a smaller ask, but it's an important reconfiguration. So fingers crossed we get these grants, because let's be honest, we don't have a great record of getting our fair share of the grand pie, both at the federal level and at the state level. So it's very encouraging to have the state asking us to submit. We're putting our money on the table, saying we will spend our share of these funds. We commit it by voting for this tonight, and having been invited to tender, fingers crossed the state says, here's close to 1.5 million, go ahead with these 3 important projects for Manningham.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen Mayne. Are there any other speakers? There being no other speakers, I'll put the motion. Those in favour? And carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item 12, shared services. There are no shared services reports, so we'll move on to item 13, Chief Executive Officer. 13.1, determination of mayoral and councillor allowances. Do I have a mover?
So moved.
Councillor Stephen Mayne. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Kleinert. Councillor Stephen Mayne, would you like to talk to the motion?
Thanks, Mr Mayor. This recommendation is kicking off a process by which we'll go out to the community to consult on whether there should be an adjustment to the council allowances paid at the City of Manningham. The history of this is that the Minister wrote to the Council over a year ago to say, we've now grown to be of sufficient size that you're now in the largest category councillors in the state. You're at level 3. And being at level 3, you are invited now to reflect on your council allowances and be paid as a level 3 councillor. Now, I think history shows that normally councillors, when they're told they're in a level, they are paid at that level, and as the officer report notes, all of our neighbours, from Knox to Banyule to Whitehorse to Burundara to Maroondah, are paid at the top end of whatever their state government minister declared band is. So I wasn't on the council at the time, but I have to really take my hat off to the then councillors a year ago. In the middle of COVID, at the time they were spending a couple of $1 million in supporting the community, they actually said it's not the right time to have a review of our council allowances. We will delay this and through until after the election. Just like many public companies and other institutions took voluntary pay cuts to reflect the hardship and hurt that was in the community and to show some leadership. So I take my hat off to you, Mr Mayor, and the other returned councillors for taking that decision. That is a decision that has saved the community, I think, probably close to $80,000 in terms of what would have been standard practice to what has actually happened. Effectively a volunteer act of pay restraint by those 9 councillors at the time. If you combine that, I think, with the incredibly large underspend of council's expenditure budget, which I think is probably going to run to close to 100,000 in terms of non-spent council expenses budget, this has been one of the low-cost periods for actually paying for councillors to serve the community, this last 12 to 18-month period. So we are where we are now, where I personally am not particularly comfortable voting or proposing any change to councillor remuneration arrangements. I would far prefer this to be done by an independent tribunal, and I'm relieved to be able to say, as the report outlines, that we will have an independent tribunal kicking in, taking over this pay-setting arrangement from both the minister and councillors, who effectively share the responsibility at the moment, sometime in the 21-22 financial year, but we don't know when. But the process we have now is that straight after the election, you have to have a look at your pay under the relevant laws. Plus, because we delayed the pay decision, having moved through the bands a year ago, it's the second reason why we have to look at the pay. So we can't actually say, "Oh, too hard, go away, we don't want to do this," even though it troubles some of us that we're making any reflections or decisions about our pay. So in a good, transparent move, we're going out to the community with the proposal to move to the top of band 3, having looked at the benchmarking of what all of our neighbours do. As councillors, we've been paid less than virtually all of our neighbours for the last quite a long period in terms of being a level 2 versus level 3, and obviously for the last year in terms of voluntarily still being paid at level 2 despite being level 3. So we'll go out to the community, we'll test where it sits. I know when we went out last time there was an interesting front page story in the now defunct and closed News Corporation owned Manningham Leader, where they were somehow suggesting the councillors were being greedy for just simply doing what the minister asked us to do. I simply make the point that the Murdoch men who control News Corp have taken more than $1 billion in salary from public companies over the last 20 years. So I think when you compare that with the drop in the bucket that we're paid at $28,000 at the moment versus $40,000 for the minimum wage, I don't think it's unreasonable for us to follow the officer recommendation to go out to the community with the modest increases in remuneration proposed in the report.
Thank you, Councillor Stephen May. Councillor Kleinert, anything to add? Any speakers against the motion?
Mr. Mayor,
Councillor
I'm not
Chen.
sure that whether I'm against the motion or for the motion, because I have problem with the increase of the figures recommended in Clause A. So my reason is being a councillor is always a privilege and an honor, because we are in a unique position to serve the whole community. Yes, mayors and councillors are allowed to receive allowance under the Local Government Act, and I have heard some arguments in support of the increase. For example, the arguments draw similarities between council and company, and councillor and director. But council is a local government entity. Council is neither a private company nor a public company. Even Manningham has been upgraded as a Category 3 council, and our current allowance is still within the range of Category 3. And in my view, the current allowance is sufficient to recognize council's contribution to voluntary and part-time role in local government, and is able to attract high caliber talent with community in mind. So therefore, I will not support the increase in the recommendation, but I know there is a procedure issue, and I'm willing to listen and consider feedbacks from the community. And that is my position. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Councillor Chen.
And I will take it as against. Or
Thank you. Yeah, I was just trying to work out whether
It's against what's written in the motion.
it's against what's written in the report. So I will give the let me finish. Is there any other speakers for? Thank you. Any other speakers against? Thank you. I'll offer the opportunity to Councillor Stephen Mayne to respond specifically without introducing any new information.
No, nothing further to add.
Thank you, Councillor Mayne. I will then put that motion to the floor. Those in favour? And those against? That is carried. Thank you. Councillors. Item 13.2, informal meeting of councillors. Do I have a mover? Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I recommend that the recommendation that be adopted.
You move that the recommendation be adopted?
Yes, thank you.
Do I have a seconder? Councillor Mayne, thank you. I will put that motion. Those in favour? Thank you, and that is passed unanimously. Item 14, notices of motion. 14.1, notice of motion. Councillor Stephen Mayne, number 1/2021. Do I have a mover?
So moved, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mayne. And do I have a seconder? Councillor Lightbody. Councillor Mayne, would you like to speak to the motion?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The purpose of this motion is to formally kickstart a review of our meeting procedures and effectively have 3 different bites at the cherry in terms of councillors being able to discuss and vote on potential changes to our meeting procedures guides. So tonight we're simply calling for a report to come back to the August 24 council meeting, which will commence a review of council's governance rules containing options and officer recommendations for changes and improvements to our meeting procedures. Now we've picked that date, August 24, so that it comes after the very intense work that will go into the 4-year plan and the initial budget of this 4-year term council that will complete at the end of June. Now, in terms of trying to save the officers some time and cut to the chase and get onto the topics of potential changes, I've socialised 12 different possible changes after consulting with all the colleagues and with the management team. So we've got some clarity on some potential changes. And I just want to spend a brief amount of time going through what some of them are. So first one, item 1, is that we note in the minutes the fors and againsts. Okay, so it's just more transparent in terms of how people are voting. Item 2 is we publish a transcript of the meeting. We already get a transcript as part of our Facebook Live service, we just don't publish it. So the majority of people, when given a transcript or a video to watch, if they want to have a look at what's happened, will read the transcript. So we move to a Australia First model of posting transcripts of every council meeting. It will be more accessible and a more complete and more accessible record of the meeting at no further cost, given we're already getting it. Point 3, that you're allowed to be a responder as a mover if anyone else speaks on the item, rather than the quite adversarial approach where you're only allowed to wrap up the debate if someone's spoken against. Or rebut someone, you just want to make an extra point in collaboratively closing a discussion. So that will free up the discussion, plus slightly reduce the speaker limit for the mover from 5 minutes to 4 minutes. Another point is that we're going to empower the officers. So we're going to allow a councillor to provide 6 days' notice that we would like a presentation from the officers on an item of business. This is getting the experts, who know far more than we do, up at the podium, briefing us and the community about an important issue, if we ask them to. And it's not just up to us, though, because the next point is saying that the CEO we're going to empower, that he can ask for any officer to give any 5-minute presentation on any item of business. So if he feels someone's got up a motion that needs a bit of officer context, he's got the power to let the official administrative position be put publicly. A very important thing, we are ungagging our officer experts with this proposed change. Also looking at a time clock to stick us with our 5-minute limits, which I'll probably break on this item, and also that the motion be displayed on the screen so that we all know what we're voting on. It's a minor thing which probably can be done administratively rather than through the meeting procedures, but it's mentioned in this thing tonight. And then 14-day notice for a notice of motion is too long. We're proposing to reduce this to 6 days. We're looking at transforming the regular councillor question time, which we'll hear quite a lengthy question time session later on tonight, to what's called a councillor reports, statements and questions, where you can get up and do a 5-minute, are you aware, Mr Mayor, this has happened, I went to this function, this person, so you can just do a little report back to the community, rather than the whole thing being, again, quite adversarial, where you can only get up and speak if you're questioning someone. Well, if you just want to say something nice, you don't want to actually challenge or question. So liberating and freeing up the way that councillors can engage with the community and with their colleagues in that particular section of the meeting. Also proposing a second opportunity for public questions at the end of the meeting for 15 minutes, unscripted oral questions. Community comes in, watches a 3-hour meeting, that's all very interesting. Would you like to ask a question at the end of it? Very empowering for the community, rather than the sort of a written question formula at the start, which we currently have. And this would return to the model of 10 years ago, where we had written questions at the start and oral questions at the end, and a very engaged community. So there's some of the changes. Looking forward to, one, having a discussion on what the officers think in August, and then at the December meeting, hearing what the community thinks, and then we vote on our final changes and we put it in the process on January 1 next year. I know it's sometimes a little controversial for councillor-led proposals to change like this, but I'm hoping that we can agree that this is saving the officers some time by actually giving them a sense of where the councillors would like to go, and also having great community engagement with a formal consultation process, and also having the officers having 2 opportunities in reports to give us their views. And I hope the officers also appreciate that we're giving them more power to speak and be heard at council meetings. So I hope that the councillors will support this motion. There are quite a few meaningful changes. It will bring more transparency, more openness and more community engagement.
And your time is up.
Thank you.
Sorry, now, Councillor Lightbody. Would anyone like to speak against the motion? Would anyone else like to speak for the motion? Councillor Lang.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to encourage our council to adopt looking at the changes for our council meetings. In particular, I like the fact that changes can open up the transparency of our meetings and can also open up great community engagement, because that's what we're here for.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Any other speakers? I will therefore put the motion. Those in favour? And carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. Item 14.2, notice of motion by Councillor Thomas Lightbody, number 2 of 2021. Do I have a mover?
I'd like to move that Council shows its support for equality and inclusivity by registering to march in the scheduled Midsummer Pride March on Sunday the 23rd of May 2021 under a Manningham City Council badge.
Okay.
I've stuffed up, have I?
That's okay.
This is the motion.
You're moving that the motion be adopted.
Okay. Should I just continue? Or
No, if you can move, you can speak to the motion in a minute.
okay.
You're sorry. Sorry, I'll just ask for governance. So
Who's reading the motion?
you can read the motion in full. So yes, you are allowed to continue.
Okay.
Yep.
I'll continue from where I left off. So under Manningham Council banner and notes, registration needs to occur prior to Friday 19th of March 2021. And B, note that due to COVID restrictions, there is a maximum of 10 participants per group to ensure that all groups can participate. As a result, the 10 people should be made primarily of a mix of councillors and council staff, with any remaining places open to expressions of interest by local community members and community organisations not already represented in the march.
Thank you, Councillor Lightbody. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Laura Main. I'd like to talk to the motion.
Yes. I'm really happy to be moving this motion. The Midsummer Pride March is a great opportunity for us to join with most other metropolitan councils and a number of other community organisations in publicly showing our support for our LGBTIQ+ communities. This isn't just a show of support to our residents and businesses, but it's also a reflection of our organisation's commitment to supporting our staff and reaffirms our commitment to equality and inclusivity in both our organisation and the community. That's why I'm so excited to be moving this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Lightbody. Councillor Laura Main.
I believe this is a great motion proposed by Councillor Lightbody and will portray a positive message of inclusion in Manningham. On the face of it, this motion is simply allowing the use of our logo and 10 people to participate in a parade that we've done before, but I believe with the history of homophobia in Manningham, assaults in parks, and etc., a unanimous council vote in support of this motion sends a greater message to our wider community about the position of council on this very important issue. This message of conclusion of all members of our community should be vital and central focus of this council and all councils. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Main. Are there any speakers against the motion? Are there any other speakers for the motion? There being no other speakers, I'll put that motion. Those in favour? And that is carried unanimously. Thank you, councillors. We may now move on to item 15, urgent business. Councillor Diamonte, if you could please leave the room. Item 15.1, Commonwealth Bank of Australia closure at Macedon Square. Do I have a mover?
Mr Mayor, I'd like to move the motion
Councillor Stephen Main.
that's hopefully appearing on the screen, that Council 1 notes with concern a letter from the Commonwealth Bank to the CEO dated 21 January 2021 advising of the permanent closure of the CBA branch at Macedon Square in Lower Templestowe after it was temporarily closed in late 2019-20 as a COVID-19 measure to free up staff for more call centre work. 2, resolves to include a copy of the letter in the minutes of this meeting and undertake an advocacy campaign with CBA to delay or reverse this decision, including a letter from the Mayor or CEO to relevant CBA personnel. 3, requests officers prepare a briefing for councillors outlining current ATM coverage in Manningham, council's current banking relationships, and the history of bank branch openings and closures since Manningham was proclaimed in 1994. And 4, specifically requests the CBA to engage with property owners at Macedon Square to ensure an ATM service is provided beyond the current proposed closure date of 19 February 2021.
Thank you, Councillor Main. I would now like a seconder for the motion. Councillor Kleinert, Councillor Main, Stephen Main, would you like to speak to the motion?
Yes, Mr Mayor. I must admit I was very disappointed during the COVID shutdown when I went to my local Commonwealth Bank branch. I remember going and opening the first ever Crikey bank account in 2000, and I went to try and do some business there and it was shut. And I was sent down to Bulleen Plaza, so I went down there and booked an appointment and spoke to one of their officers down there. I remember thinking at the time, it's disappointing they've temporarily closed it, I hope they reopen it. But I'm a bit worried that they won't, and they'll take the opportunity of COVID to permanently close this. And unfortunately, the letter came through last week to the CEO saying that the branch would be never open again, and even the ATM service would be withdrawn from February 19 this year. So this will leave Macedon Square, which is the number one community meeting place in the Ruffy Ward and a very important local activity centre in Manningham, where we're considering spending $2 or $3 million improving in the period ahead, without a bank branch and possibly even without an ATM at all, which is very disappointing because bank branches and ATMs are pivotal contributors to local activity centres. They bring community in. It's a vital service that you need, like the post office and like the supermarket and everything else. So I propose that we actually advocate to the Commonwealth Bank to not do this. So I had a conversation this afternoon with the two executives at the bank who signed the letter, and it was a good discussion. And they pointed out that they still have 3 CBA branches at the Pines, Bulleen Plaza, and at Westfield. Westfield's recently been refurbished, but I still made the point that you've got the most branches in the state. You're worth $78 billion. Does it really matter if you're dropping a little bit of cash on what's a nice, large, spacious, popular long-standing branch. So I'm hoping that our engagement will lead to a change of decision here. I know that they have a landlord who has said that he or she doesn't want an ATM service provided at the current location if the branch is closed. So I think there's an engagement that potentially the council could do with the landlord to understand the relationship, and we should try and push a few buttons and use any leverage we have to retain a Commonwealth Bank branch service at Macedon Square. And by moving this urgent motion tonight, we're signalling publicly to the bank that we are disappointed with this decision. I note that the CBA is currently, I think, our main transaction provider. I think they're the biggest provider to local councils in the country. They've got more than 50 of the 79 councils where they are the transaction provider. So they are very proud of being the largest service provider to councils across the state. And I think that in considering that they ought to also consider the council's view about the breadth and size and scope of the retail branch operations that they offer. I also acknowledge that branch traffic is down, that internet banking is up, that ATM usage is down, that technology is moving, and that branch closures have been a feature net for the last 25 years. There's been a steady reduction, and I suspect there's going to be a sudden increase in the reductions in the post-COVID environment. But that doesn't mean we don't want branches, and that this decision couldn't be delayed. So let's do our best to fight for the Macedon community, for the traders and for the residents and for the shoppers, to do our best to fight the good fight, to persuade the Commonwealth Bank to reverse this decision and to retain a branch at Macedon Square.
Thank you, Councillor Mayne. Councillor Kleinert? Would anyone else like to speak against the motion?
Not against the clarification, though.
Clarification, Councillor Goff?
I look there at item 4 and it says specifically request CBA to engage with the property owners. In Councillor Mayne's speech, he actually said that council will engage with the property owners. My question is it council's role to engage with property owners over private contracts between two different parties?
I am happy to refer that question, but I'm pretty sure the answer is no. And I'll ask the CEO to clarify.
No, it's not ordinarily our role, but my understanding of it is that the intent was as outlined in point 4 there, which was to request the CBA to engage with property owners at Macedon Square.
Thank you, Councillor Goff.
Well, Mr. Mayor, I just want to make it clear that that is what I'll be voting for, not as what it was discussed by the mover of the motion.
Yes, as with all motions. Councillor Lang, you had some comments?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I do encourage council to support this motion. I think it is important that we actually look at where our banks and ATMs are in all of our municipality, and that we ensure that the community have access to a vital service wherever they live, so that we actually look at the map of our municipality, the location of our ATMs, and make sure that our community can get finances or bank finances when they need it, which is essential. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lang. Are there any other speakers either for or against the motion? There being no speakers against, I will put that motion, and those in favour? Thank you. Passed unanimously. In the absence of Councillor Diamonte, could we just invite Councillor Diamonte? Thank you. We are up to item 16, Councillors' question time. Councillor Mayne has submitted a number of questions to Council as noted in the agenda. Councillor Mayne, I'll hand over to you to ask your questions. Thank you.
Thanks, Mr Mayor. Do I need to read it out in full? I mean, it's been...
You can summarise it if you like.
Yeah, so look, it's...
The officer is very well...
Yeah. So could the Director of City Planning provide an update on the Yarra Valley Country Club situation?
Could I ask Councillor Angelo Corambas, Director of City Planning and Community, to please respond.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Through you. Firstly, excuse me, a planning scheme amendment known as C125 was prepared by the Minister for Planning at the request of the Country Club. So that amendment seeks to change the planning controls that cover that site, effectively to enable the site to be redeveloped for residential purposes and significant area of public open space. But the main change, the main rationale is to get residential development on the site instead of the current Country Club facilities and functions. So the proposal, as we understand it at this stage, could include between 160 to 310 dwellings on the site, ranging in different size sort of buildings, from townhouses through to apartment buildings. The development itself, the residential component, is concentrated on the southern part of the site, pretty much where the current buildings and the Country Club car park's located. That's sort of the main focus, but it does extend around the Sonico site as well. And the balance of the site, which constitutes about 73% of the site and over approximately 16 hectares, is proposed to be set aside as open space and transferred to either the council, if this council so wishes, or potentially to the state government. So that decision hasn't been made yet. In terms of the current status, the Minister has set up an advisory committee to consider and make recommendations on this amendment, but also to look at the revised Bulleen Precinct Land Use Planning Framework, which is a strategic document the government has prepared that covers that part of the Bulleen area and the river corridor, and proposes a number of potential improvements in terms of land uses, pedestrian connections, etc., and covers sort of Bulleen, parts of Bulleen, Heidelberg and Lower Templestowe. So the Yarra Valley Country Club's part of that, in that area covered by this proposed framework plan. Hence, this current advisory committee that's taking place now is considering both the amendment and that framework that covers the broader area. So the amendment and that framework plan were exhibited last year, so roughly around August and September. Council made a submission, as did a number of other parties. The advisory committee is currently in progress, so it met on yesterday, this week. So it started on the 18th and is proposed to conclude on the 1st of March, and is hearing from the proponent, from state government departments, and a series of expert witnesses that have been brought by the various parties. So Council is being represented by a barrister, Daniel Robinson, and has been instructed by Harwood Andrews lawyers. So the part of the question that was tabled was, what does council want? So effectively, officers consider that some residential development on the land is appropriate, and as is the proposed transfer of private open space to potential public open space. That represents a significant community benefit. However, we've also raised concerns in our submission and to the panel that there is insufficient information currently to determine the appropriateness of the proposed planning controls that have been tabled, particularly in terms of the visual and environmental impact on the surrounding area. So, look, in summary, Council is seeking that the proponent demonstrate in more detail how the proposed development will work in terms of scale and form, and how it's going to be compatible with and respond positively to the local area, which is, as you can imagine, is quite sensitive, being along the river corridor and right next to the Heidi Museum as well. We're asking for the proponent to ensure that there's housing choice by providing a range of densities and housing types and housing sizes, And we're also seeking a minimum of the housing on the site to be affordable housing, so 5% to be affordable housing, consistent with Council's policy position. And overall, effectively what we're asking for is there needs to be a stronger net community benefit demonstrated in the projects. You know, for example, the open space, proposed open space not only needs to be usable but also accessible. ESD has to be high quality on the site, and connections with Heidi need to be addressed. Not saying these things haven't been done, but we believe there's more work that needs to be done in some of these areas. In terms of the outcome, part of the question was what do we anticipate the outcome to be? It's too early, councillors, at this stage to say. As I said, the advisory committee is currently hearing from submitters and a range of expert witnesses called by different parties. We're providing councillors with updates weekly, and there'll be another update through the councillor boards and tomorrow. The advisory committee is required to submit its report in writing to the Minister for Planning effectively by the 15th of April. So if the amendment is approved by the Minister, it's our understanding at this stage, it'll be the responsibility of Council down the track to approve any future development for that site. So the amendment will sort of facilitate it, but it'll still need to come through Council through a normal development approval type process. The final part of the question was, can a report on the panel process be brought to the Council meeting? So given that timeframe that I've just mentioned, the March meeting might be premature, but officers will be briefing councillors in early March on the amendment and seeking direction on that proposed, significant proposed public open space that I mentioned. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, councillor.
Excuse me, can I have a question to Mr. Carruthers?
I'll let councillor Mayne finish his questions. You can come back to that. Councillor Mayne.
Second question was, could the CEO provide an update on whether the letters from the Mayor outlining the sale and leaseback arrangement with the Templestowe RSL have been sent or prepared for to go out to the 30 mayors of Victorian councils which host RSL branded pokies venues, and would it be possible for a copy of one of these letters when it's completed to be made publicly accessible via the council website, preferably adjacent to the minutes of the December council meeting where the matter was first publicly disclosed?
Thank you. I'll refer that to the CEO.
Thank you for the question, councillor. Yes, the letters have been completed, and I understand they're starting to be sent out today to the 30 councils, and we can certainly put a copy of one of those letters up on the website and do our best to have it adjacent to the December council meeting minutes.
Your third question, councillor Mayne.
It says on the notice paper for Rochelle Quattrocchi, Director of City Services, is it possible for the tenant clubs at Tedajani to have the Bull Ants sign painted on the silver tin roof above the eaves at the pavilion at Tedajani, funded by the tenant clubs with no cost to council?
Thank you. I'll ask Ms. Rochelle Quattrocchi, Director of Services, City Services, to please respond.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Mayne, and our officers have been in discussion with the club about the proposal that would need a planning permit to be submitted into council for assessment. We've also recommended to the club they actually seek endorsement from other stakeholders who use the site as well. I understand that other club goes under the name of Bull Ants, and there shouldn't be an issue with that. Officers will work together with the club and provide assistance with how they need to lodge a planning application if need be, and where the information is made available on our website. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, sorry, Councillor Chen, you had some questions?
Just a follow-up question
For
Mr. Carruthers. And you responded
That's okay.
You responded the planning application amendment, and you touch on the housing choice, residential housing choices for the future residents. You touch on the social housing, and I just wondering, and social housing, we will need to consider public transport that will be accessible for them. And I'm not sure that whether council has put that proposition to panel, or can we consider that in the submissions? Thank you.
Yep, we can look at that.
Thank you. Thank you, councillors. That's noted.
Question just on that.
Thank you. Yep, councillor Goff.
Is this panel, with regard to, that's coming at the moment, with regard to an actual planning application, or is it with regard to land use and zoning? Because I don't know. Is this discussing, I don't think it is, but I could be wrong. We're not discussing the actual structure. Aren't we at this hearing discussing the zoning?
Yeah, the advisory committee is considering a rezoning and proposed controls and guidelines that the amendment contains. What was submitted originally by the proponent actually what included a development plan, which is effectively a high-level concept plan of what the development could look like. Just before, well, I think it was Christmas Eve, the proponent withdrew that and said that they will just seek, as Councillor Goff is saying, just the rezoning and the wording of the new provisions without providing any guidance in terms of a plan that would come later. But effectively, yeah, we are considering a rezoning and the appropriate wording that should be in the relevant provisions to guide the appropriate development and the things that I outlined in my response before.
Thank you. Angelo? Okay, councillor Lang, you have a question?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I have 3 questions. My questions come from a very impressed and thankful position. So, number 1, thank you to Officer James Patterson for your voluntary, professional and open-minded community consultation with Everard Drive Warrandyte residents. Can the Director of City Services confirm that moving forward there will be a planned approach to parking and community consultation with the residents of Everard Drive?
I'll direct that to Rochelle Quattrucci, Director City Services.
Thank you, Councillor Lang, for your question. Following an on-site meeting with residents within the street, there has been a proposal put forward in terms of consultation on going around parking within the street. I can confirm that's happening. Thank you for your feedback as well, about the officer involved.
Councillor Lang?
Thank you. My second question comes from the same sentiments. Thank you to Officers Helen Napier and Michael Tregoning for their professional and informative walkabout of Mullen Trail behind Currarong Bush Park and at the end of Bellbird Place, Warrandyte. Can the Director of City Services provide an update on the fire preparedness work by officers and land management issues raised in that walkabout?
Thank you again, Councillor Lang, for your question and acknowledgement of staff as well involved in the matter. There has been further discussion with relevant service authorities around maintenance and fire preparation work in the area, and a plan being put in place for that maintenance to occur. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Lang, you had 3 questions.
I did. And again, it comes from the same sentiments. Thank you to council officers for addressing many residents' permits to burn concerns and inquiries. Can officers provide an update on the approach to the messaging with the community and the approach moving forward regarding our permit to burn permits?
I will refer that to Mr Angelo Carumbas, Director of City Planning and Community.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Thanks for the question. It's been Manningham's practice to issue permits to burn for a 3-year period, and these permits, which is almost 2,000, expired on the 30th of November. So since then, our local laws team, as some of you would know, have received requests for new permits to burn But due to localised conditions and the heightened risk of fire, effectively high curing rates in Manningham, applications for new permits have been denied since that time. So that has caused a bit of confusion. We acknowledge that because the CFA hasn't yet declared the fire danger period, yet council is not issuing any more permits. So there appears to be a contradiction. Look, we have had discussions with the CFA, and it has been confirmed that the localised Manningham localised risk-based approach is very appropriate and supported. So although the district hadn't been declared, councils can take appropriate action as they see fit if the local conditions, basically dictate that it's more dangerous here as it might be in other parts of this district. I can also confirm that it was a coincidence that the CFA today has advised us that the fire danger period will commence on the 8th of February across the whole district, so which includes us and 3 other councils. So that'll be communicated through our normal channels, probably tomorrow, if not already done so. So in terms of moving forward, officers are reviewing the permit to burn process as part of our local law review to provide a more efficient and clear process, and that information will be promoted on our website when that time comes. Additionally, we're going to be looking at new permit systems to improve communication with our community. So we're going to try to be a bit more savvy in terms of the use of technology, text messages, social media, etc., rather than traditional means. But prior to the completion of the local law review, any permits issued will clearly specify, what residents can and can't do. But in the meantime, now that the fire danger period, will be declared, we will definitely not be issuing any permits. And once the fire danger period in Manningham is reduced, we will recommence issuing permits until such time as I said, we'll go through a proper review process and see how this council wants to deal with this issue moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Angelo.
Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Diamonte.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'd like to thank the council officers for the action that's been recently taken to address the ongoing issue of rubbish being dumped on the nature strips of Mearda and Firth Streets in Doncaster, and it's significant dumping which has represented quite a large hazard for residents. So on behalf of those residents that live and work and move around that area, I would like to ask the Director of City Services to provide an update on council activities, what they're doing to address this ongoing issue, both from a clean-up as well as a prevention perspective.
Thank you, and I will refer that to the Director of City Services. Thank you, Rochelle Quattricci.
Thank you, Councillor Diamonte, for your question. There has been quite a bit of education and awareness program around waste, in particular litter and dumped rubbish. There are available 2 booked services for hard collection per year available to residents, and that can be made online. However, on occasion we do find that there is dumped rubbish, unfortunately, within our city. That is something that we do respond to, and there is a compliance process in follow-up to that as well. But as mentioned, there's also education awareness programs. We also work with DHHS as well in relation to, and other partners as well, in terms of appropriate measures to ensure that there's not dumped rubbish after tenants leaving properties. Thank you for your question.
Thank you. Do you have other questions?
Yes, I just have one other. Again, the Director of City Services. Can you please provide an update on the November 2020 petition that came to this council to install a boom gate leading to the Anthony Street car park at Timber Ridge Reserve?
Thank you for your question again, Councillor Diamonte. Officers are looking at security measures on that site, which does include reviewing whether or not a boom gate is a priority at that particular site, or if there's other measures we can put in place, such as lighting, etc. We also work with our local police as well in monitoring these sites. during after hours and when there's not activity within the reserve and it's quite dark after hours. There's antisocial behaviour happening at certain times. We're also reviewing a strategy in general of our open space areas for the use of boom gates and other safety measures and security on these sites.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Any further questions? Councillor Chen?
May I ask a question just to follow up the officer's response to Councillor Diamante's question, please, about illegal dumping? And it reminds me, your response reminds me local government waste forum survey some years ago. The survey found that clean up illegal dumping and litter cost local council between $40,000 to $2 million per year, with majority responses that cost ranging between $250,000 to $500,000, the majority responses. And the money could be well expended elsewhere. And I'm just wondering, given the financial cost to council, health and safety issues, could officer consider develop a strategy or at least an action plan, and including prevention, management, cleanup, advocacy, which is also very important to achieve our vision for Manningham to be a better livable community and with a culture of rejecting, dumping rubbish and litter. Thank you. An action plan. Thanks.
I'll ask you to respond. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. For you, the Mayor. Councillor Chen, thank you for your question, and I will take that one on notice. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions from councillors? Being no other questions, I will move on to item 17, confidential reports. Oh, there are no confidential reports. So with that, I am very happy to close the meeting and bid you farewell on behalf of the council. Thank you.